Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in Judges chapter 18. We're going to be starting in verse 19 this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, as we start here in verse 19, the last lesson, verse 18, we saw that the Danites come. They take the images and the teraphim, the ephod, and the Levite. Well, not the Levite, but they're taking these things, getting ready to steal them. And as they're getting ready to leave Micah's house and Micah's land area there, the Levite sees them and stops them. And he says, what are you doing? And now we come to verse 19 for the Danites' response. Verses 19 and 20 says, And they said unto him, Hold your peace, and lay your hand upon your mouth, and go with us, and be to us a father and a priest. Is it better for you to be a priest unto the house of one man, or that you should be a priest unto a tribe and a family in Israel? And the priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod and the teraphim and the graven image and went in the midst of the people. Now, it says here in verse 20, the priest's heart was glad. Well, he was excited at this new opportunity. How could he turn this down? I mean, he's got the opportunity to be a priest to a whole tribe, rather than to just one man and his family and maybe a few families around in the area. This Levite was already completely out of God's will by being a priest. He wasn't supposed to be a priest. And also because of worshiping idols. What he thought was a blessing from God was a promotional curse from Satan. Listen, today we need to understand that an invitation to serve in a big church is not a guarantee of having a successful ministry. Our success is determined by God and faithfulness to His word, not by the numbers of people in a church and not by the number of ministries we start or that we have in that church. Success has nothing to do with numbers, but has everything to do with faithfulness to God and to His word. And it says here that this Levite went in the midst of the people. It probably was the reason why when they traveled, that the Levite was in the midst of the people was for his own protection. But one scholar seems to think that possibly it was a picture of how the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle of Moses was when they camped in the wilderness. The children of Israel camped in the wilderness, that the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant were in the middle of the rest of the children of Israel. Because you had the Ark and then the tabernacle and then the priests and the Levites camped around it. And then around them were the rest of the tribes of Israel. And it was just a picture that the scholar thought was interesting. Verse 21 says, So they turned and departed, and they put the little ones and the cattle and the carriage before them. And the reason why the little ones and the cattle and the carriage and everything is going ahead is because they were probably expecting to be attacked from behind. Now, verse 22 says, And when they were a good way off from the house of Micah, the men that were in the house near to Micah's house were gathered together and overtook the children of Dan. Now, it seems that because of the quickness with which Micah, with these men gathered together, and that everyone in Micah's community, remember, it wasn't just Micah and his mother that lived. There was like several houses in this area. And the quickness with which they gathered, it seems that very possibly that Micah also allowed these other people to come and worship God in his house of gods and that they all enjoyed this thing of worshiping these idols with this Levite. And Micah's men were able to catch up to the Danites quickly because of the slowness with which the Danites traveled, because of the women and the children and the sheep and goats and whatever else they had. So they caught up to them quite quickly. So here, the children of, these people, they see that these gods and the Levite are gone, and they chase after them, and they catch up to them. Verse 23, and it says here, and they cried unto the children of Dan, and they turned their faces, and they said unto Micah, what ails thee, that you come with such a company? So Micah and all these other men that came with him are watching their future prosperity and counsel at the hand of the Levite from these idols be carried away. Oh yeah, they would go to this Levite and they would ask counsel from God and worshiping these idols. So they're watching their future prosperity. They want blessings from God, and in their mind, they think worshiping God through this Levite and these idols would bring them prosperity and bring them counsel from God. So, but it is, it's the same with idols today that people worship. Idols today can be carried away, they can be stolen, they can be wrecked, they can be burned or confiscated, they can decay. And here Micah now, he's watching these things be going away. And then the children of Dan, they say to him, what aileth thee? So they ask him, what's your problem, Micah? You can be sure that Micah and the men that were with him were definitely sick. But it was spiritual sickness caused by rejecting God's way of worship rather than worshiping him the way he said he should be worshiped. You see, the problem was that Micah, it wasn't that Micah was completely into idolatry and forsook God. No, what Micah was doing was Micah was trying to worship God in a different way. He wanted to worship God in a way that he wanted to do it, not the way God said it to be done. And he probably, like a lot of people who can't see God, he made his own images and of what he thought maybe God looked like, and he began to worship these images and thinking that at least he had something that he could see. And then he had a priest. He had his own Levite. So Micah here is very excited about his future with these molten image, the graven image, the Levite, the teraphims, the ephods, and he's all excited. But he's doing it all the wrong way. And he's worshiping. He wants to worship God, but he wants to do it in his way. And it's the same way with people today. People today, they want to go to church and worship God their way. They want to get to heaven their way. They don't want to get to heaven in God's way, which is coming to God through the cross and humbling themselves to the blood of Christ, which saves us. They want to get to heaven through their good works, through this, through that, through whatever. So Micah is basically, he's a lot like people today. Verse 24, and he said, you have taken away my gods which I made, and the priest, and you are gone away. And what have I more? And what is this that you say unto me? What ails you? He says, you've taken away my gods which I have made. I guess the question to ask is, why would he want his gods if his gods can't prevent themselves from even being stolen? Why does mankind make idols of things that will eventually pass away? And then he says here, and what have I more? Micah says, and what more do I have? You know, nothing in this world meant more to Micah than those things that were being stolen from him. The priest, the Levite, the idols, the teraphim, those things meant everything to him. And yet Micah's zeal for his idols and for his priest will put many Christians today to shame who have a familiar attitude towards God. And at the same time, they have an attraction to this world. Micah was wholehearted towards his idols and towards the priest and everything that he set up. And he wasn't wavering at all. And yet many Christians today, they waver. They want to serve God and they want to have their feet in this world too. They want to enjoy the pleasures and the sinful things of this world. The zeal that Micah had for the things that he set up was puts to shame many Christians today who have a half-hearted devotion towards God. History does not tell us, but maybe this loss of Micah's most prized possessions caused him to turn to the true God who can never be taken away from him. Again, we don't know what happened in Micah's life or this Levite's life or anything else after chapter 18. But we do know that if possible, that if he turned to God, that he would experience that his loss would be a great gain if this loss would cause him to turn back to God and worship God the way he wants to be worshiped. Verse 25, and it says, and the children of Dan said unto him, let not thy voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows run upon thee, and you lose your life with the lives of your household. You know, the Danites don't want to hear any more complaints from Micah. And if Micah persists, then the passion and the anger of these 600 Danite soldiers will be kindled, and Micah and the men that are with him will be killed. Now, but the fact, listen now, this is interesting, but the fact that Micah and the men will turn around and will go home means that they did not think that the idols and the priest was worth fighting for or even dying for. If Micah was willing to watch the most precious things to him be carried away without at least a fight, then they weren't really as precious to him as he thought they were. Yeah, they weren't really that precious to him. If he's willing to let them go and not fight for them or even die for them. Micah worshiped gods that needed to be protected rather than Micah being protected by his gods. Are we willing to lose our life for the God who came and gave his life for us? Are we willing to go all the way for our God who came and died for us? The idols that people worship, whether it's money, home, car, career, a sports team, whatever it is, the idols that people worship, they will never pay the ultimate price to those who worship them. Your car is never going to die for you. Your money is never going to die for you. These things will never pay the ultimate price, but God did. God came in the form of Jesus Christ, and he died on the cross and paid the penalty for our sins. And because of that, we can lay our life down and we can die for him also, because he died for us. We're going to finish in verse 26. And it says here, and the children of Dan went their way. And when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back unto his house. Eventually, the idols that people have will either be taken away, destroyed, repossessed, fall apart, or drive away, and the worshiper will be left with nothing. And as I said before, if Micah returned to worship the God of Israel properly, the way God said, then actually this loss of his was actually a gain for him. Again, all that Micah did, the house of gods, the idols, the Levite, the teraphim, the ephod, all of this that he set up was done to worship the God of Israel. But he wanted to do it how he thought it would be easier and more comfortable and meaning for him to do. He wanted to worship God his own way. And people, like I said, people want to worship God their own way. They don't, why? The reason why is because in our hearts, there's a sinful nature in our hearts that hates God, and we hate to obey God. And we have to have the moving of the Holy Spirit within us to create this desire to worship God, to humble ourselves, to worship God the way he wants us to worship him, not how we think. And this is what Micah was doing. He was worshiping God how he wanted to. Micah did not completely reject God. He just created his own way to worship God. All right, we're going to continue in verse 27 next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.